Story number one: weed, drugs, tech, and science. Who will face off with the government first? This is a big story because we've seen a lot of headlines about weed and drugs and how tech companies have been using people's data to enhance their own cause. We've seen a lot of medical marijuana cases coming up to light. People saying that there's a face-off with the government, and actually what is actually safe. Is medical marijuana safe? And we've also seen drugs make a lot of headlines, like heroin, cocaine, opioid crisis, and then we've seen a lot of science, a lot of new science discoveries with genetic coding and the CRISPR tool. So these stories are surfacing along with some headlines that are gaining some attention, and this is why story number one crept its way into the top 8. Because when you're dealing with marijuana, you still have that crutch of the fact that it still is an addictive supplement, which is a drug. So people are getting very cautious about what they say is allowable and what they say is not allowable. So now the big picture is involving the government. Like, who will face off with the government? Is Facebook becoming too big? Things like that. When you look at this story in detail and why it crept its way into the top 8, some stories that made it in. The government will finally decide on whether weed is for fun or for medicine. So looking at this story, looking at how weed has changed the forefront of medical. People are saying CBD oil is a miracle drug. We've seen football players coming to bat for this drug, like the Patriots. I think it's Gronkowski came out saying that he needs CBD oil and then you've seen people come up. So weed is now at the center of attention. Who'd ever thought years ago, when the hippies were on some other planet at Woodstock, that we'd be in the almost approaching 2020, and they'd be talking about making it actually legal and cornering the black market by making it legal. There's a lot of money that's been made off weed, and some people are saying, why would you go to the government and get it for $35 when you could get it on the street for $10? So this is becoming a big story, and it's becoming a battle for legality and those who are still using or selling it on the black market. So that's why story number one crept its way in, because drugs is still a hot topic when you talk about what's happening in the news and what's happening in real time. State Attorney General assesses the size of Facebook. Like I said, they'll be looking at the reason what makes this story so big is Facebook has been around for a while now, and the company has gotten so big, and I've even found headlines saying that some politicians think that Zuckerberg should be incarcerated for some of the laws, some of the privacy laws that he's broken. But who knows? When you get a tech company like that and you provide it for everybody for free, I mean, what do you expect to happen? There are a lot of different types of people, different strokes for different folks. And if you go on Facebook, some people say it's a complete swamp. It's not a place that they will allow their kids to kind of roam around. On a lot of social media platforms, social media has changed everything. There was some articles that surfaced about how millennials have changed the traditional values even in the United States, and they don't think that's a good thing. We even saw stories that surfaced in a while back about how the founder of the internet is pretty much, he kind of regrets his invention. So you see stories like this surfacing in, and you can't help but they can't help but get your attention. 3 vaping-related deaths confirmed, and many more under investigation. Even looking at cigarettes and how people are now using e-cigarettes, vaping, to calm down that craving. And some people say there's a lot of activists on the front line saying that vaping is a bad thing. 3 deaths, and this is going to get definitely going to get the attention of officials, because they come in many different flavors. You can get them at a store, and a story like this, like I said, vaping, cigarettes, weed, Facebook, science, drugs, tech. These are some hot topics and how they're changing the pathway into the future. So let's definitely see these stories continuously to gain some steam. Sneaky SIM card swap fraud lets hackers take over your phone and steal your money. So that's a story that's even with SIM cards, how your data and all your information is on that SIM card in your phone. Some hackers are finding a way to home in on that data. New Zealand officials find half-ton of meth hidden in motors from Thailand. When these stories make it in, when you're talking about drugs and how drugs are changing the face of society, you can't help but notice stories like this. Report claims that the DMV is selling your data and making millions. This is the Department of Motor Vehicles. So tech has changed everything. You don't know who is doing what with your data, and if the DMV is making millions off of your data, people are going to probably want to know what for and why is the DMV selling my data. They have a lot of information. They know where you live at. They have your they have your license plate number. They know what kind of car you drive. They have your picture. So stories like this, I'm telling you, this is why they're in the top 8 this week. Made it just crept its way into number 1, and this is a big information age. We're living in that time where you can put your information in on a computer and people can get access to your information, where you stay. They can look at your pictures, see how you look, see when you're leaving the house. And this is why story number 1 is an amazing story. Massachusetts mayor arrested over allegedly extortion of marijuana vendors. So everybody's trying to get in on this marijuana deal. Everybody's trying to make money. Was this a clever tactic by some officials to make medical marijuana actually legit and actually make it sellable? Was this a way to combat the streets, the marijuana that's sold on the streets? We only know this story is just in its developing stages. Repeat cocaine use alters the expressions of genes in the brains. Well, this is probably already known that people who use cocaine have some type of a brain dysfunction. There's some type of miscommunication going on in their brain. People who use crack, that's why they say no to drugs. But there's a lot of people who are using drugs not knowing that it's affecting their brain. 2 healthcare providers, dozens of people charged in alleged $115 million Medicare kickback scheme. Everybody is trying to make money in this market, and that's why these stories are surfacing. They're in the developing stages, and once all of the details get out, people are once again, the laws are going to change and things are going to change around. That's why you have to keep an eye on these stories, stay informed, know what's going on. When you have kickbacks going on with either doctors or medical providers, that's not good, because you're paying these companies to not only get health care, but you have to pay deductibles, and you don't get that money back. You have to pay into the system to make your health care costs cheap. So that's why even when as we get closer to the 2020 presidential campaign, you'll probably see a lot of activists, and you see a lot of activists already trying to make healthcare better and make the healthcare system better. Google, YouTube to pay $170 million penalty over collecting kids' personal information. So once again, you see tech companies getting in trouble for collecting personal information. I think what you'll probably see in a story like this is you'll probably see the tech companies just come out and say, there's really nothing we can do once the data is inputted in the computer. We probably can protect it and store it, but it's still there. It's still there. So being able to prevent people from accessing this data is probably what they're probably, especially on free platforms. So, I mean, what can these tech companies do? That's probably what you'll see the topic of discussion turn out to be. 15 kilos of cocaine washed ashore during Hurricane Doreen. So, what drugs and this is always a hot topic. Where does all this cocaine go when it's not getting to its destination? People could be smuggling it in the ocean. There could be tons of whales on cocaine. Who would knows? That probably would explain why some of the dolphins do the things they do. They're probably high off cocaine. So a story like this definitely it has a lot of punch to it. It may get higher and higher up. It seems to be dying down a little bit. I've seen stories about drugs stay in the news, but when you're hitting a topic like this, you can't help but to wonder how long or how many people have been affected by drugs. And I think that's what's keeping the story alive. Trump administration dedicating nearly $2 billion in grants to fight opioid epidemic. A lot of people are upset with this drug epidemic because of the fact that taxpayer money has to be spent to get these people back into the workforce and back into their normal state of mind. And that's why this story, it really has, that's the only reason why these stories stay alive, because a lot of taxpayer dollars have to be spent to keep people from off drugs. Karachi's Clifton Beach swamped with syringes and medical waste. So even when it comes to medical waste, some countries still have not found a way to be able to dispose of their medical equipment, medical supplies, medical waste, and they're finding them on the beaches at Clifton Beach in Karachi. So like I say, well, you'll probably see stories like this surface all the time in different countries, especially when they have unprofessional practices. When people are trying to save money and they don't have the bringing in the revenue to be able to dispose and use the proper protocol when disposing of medical equipment, or if somebody is abusing drugs, you're going to find stories like this all the time. Amazon's Ring gave police statistics about users who refuse law enforcement requests. So Amazon constantly making headlines about their information and about what their devices are doing to not only give out customer information, but this story like this surfaced in. PayPal suspended accounts used to raise money for the Ku Klux Klan. Folks, we are living in the information age where you now have access to tons of data online. People can trade drugs, they can meet people, find sex partners online, and on top of that you have science, which is finding the chemicals that get people aroused, get people doing things. We are living in that time frame, but all of these companies, all of these fashions of new societal living have to face off against regulation and the government, and that's what you'll probably see happening during 2020. People asking questions of how can government intervene to get things back down to base, back down to normal. And that's why story number one crept its way in. You're the Mediator with me, Brian West, where it's my duty every week to give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories. As a child, I was raised up to the sun and told to mediate to the masses. If you want to contribute anyway, all you have to do is visit www.method, number 8inc.com, method80.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something, or just sponsor a program. Constantly reminding my audience that I am just a mediator. The news outlets and journalists and people on the front lines deserve all the credit. So if you want to help me out, all you have to do is visit www.method, the number 8inc.com, method80.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. Every little bit counts.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.